and welcome to Wild Geese with me, Mary Honan, on Lair Media TV. Now, Wild Geese, for anyone who doesn't know, it was a show I did some time back regularly, and it won a national award for radio. And it deals really with diaspora issues for people coming to Ireland to make Ireland their home, or alternatively those leaving our shores to make homes in other countries all over the globe. And one of those is Morgan O'Brien. Originally, by his name, it's pretty obvious he's an Irishman living here in from Limerick, who travelled to New Zealand to make New Zealand his home some years back. And it has to be said, I think he's embraced the New Zealand way of life. Hello, Morgan.
Hello there. How are you, Mary? Thank you very much for having me on your program, and I hope this will be an enjoyable experience for both of us, learning about Ireland and New Zealand culture and how they sort of join together.
Yeah.
Shall I just give you a bit of an overview of how I came to? Yes, basically, I'm a son of Palace Kenry, West Limerick. My younger brother is Emmett O'Brien, Councillor Emmett O'Brien, sort of well-known councillor in the region, and barrister. So I went to the Salesian College in Copswood, and I graduated in. I did, yes, I did. I went to Salesian College, and obviously got the great ethos of the importance of the Salesian order, and a really good grounding in Christianity and the Catholic faith there, which stood me in good stead for many years in the future. So I trained as a chef. First of all, I went to Galway and trained as a chef, and after that, I felt like I could do a little bit better, in terms of I wanted to I found the three-way splits, breakfast, lunch, and dinner really hard going, in terms of the catering side of it. Yeah. And extremely long hours. And I actually wanted to get something that was a little bit more academic. So while I was in Galway, I did a test with a HR manager, and she said you scored very high on the science. And I had been 4 years out of academics, having done the Leaving Cert and not getting a particularly fantastic result, but a good result, not a high academic result. I went back and I went to Dundalk. It was an RTC in those days, Regional Technical College, and I did a certificate in applied biology, and then a degree in food science, diploma in food science there. And while I was up there, I went to Monaghan and worked a town of Monaghan co-op for a while as well. I met all the lovely people on a truck, driving all around the countryside, meeting all these wild Republicans. There are really such lovely people.
Exciting.
And it was it was near the culmination of the end of the troubles, there as well. But you'd sort of, they'd hear you were a southern accent, and they'd be worried that you'd be they'd be worried you were a Garda, or or you were sort of going around looking for. I mean, we went to some very remote locations, and the one overwhelming thing I kept remembering the people of Cavan and Monaghan is their overwhelming generosity, bringing you in for tea, talking to you.
As long as they knew you weren't a policeman.
As long as you weren't a policeman, there was, and they'd always ask you about what's happening with the milk this week, when's the testing, so they could get good TVCs and somatic cell counts for it, because obviously they're on a quota basis. But one of the things that always reminds me there was there was these radio stations, like up there, illegal ones. So basically, the antenna was in the north of Ireland, and then the radio station, the actual broadcasting part, was in southern Ireland. So basically, ran through his yard.
They had a cross-border.
Yes, cross-border. A cross-border, radio station. So it was completely legal. He set up, on international borders. So we used to put out a shout for us, say hello to Donny and Morgan and the Truckford Town of Monaghan co-op. You tune into the radio station, which was, Pyro radio station. So there's a lot of good fun up there. But I wanted to go on anyway and do a degree, and I went to Reading University. So
Reading.
I did my Reading University. So I chose Reading because I have an aunt who has lived over there. Her name, she's got arrested. She's passed away now. Mary Beeden was her name. She's from my mother's side of the family. Murphy from
Behan.
Adaya. Beeden, yeah. Mary
Behan.
Beeden. Yeah, so she was Mary Murphy,
But
and
that's
she
an
married over there.
unusual name, Beeden.
It is. I think it's. I'm not quite sure where it is, but I think it's a sort of a relatively established English name over there, right? But he was an English gentleman himself. She married in the 1960s, and she ended up buying a place there in Reading, and she lived there until she passed away shortly before I came here. But I did a degree in food science, so it was just a sort of a combination on. So that's a straight chemistry degree. And then I worked
Morgan,
for.
can I stop you there a minute, because there's kind of crackling noise on your side.
Yeah.
Can you? Is
Can you hear me now?
Is there paper or anything that's kind of around
No,
you?
nothing around me.
Now it sounds better.
Okay, cool. So after that, then I came back to Ireland and worked for a while in Limerick at M&M Walsh Limited. They were sort of a bacon factory there in Raheen. That's actually since been, all that was sort of part of Fianna Fáil run in the mid-90s. Charlie Haughey opened it as a food innovation centre for the west of Ireland. But that's all been sold off now. And M&M Walsh is, I thought that was a bit of a bad step myself, because it was all purpose built.
Limerick now.
Doing it stuff, Yeah, Limerick has changed dramatically.
No, but I mean, even now since COVID, all the shops, I mean, when you look, Eason's is gone.
Was it? Good Lord.
Canal Street has moved out to the Crescent Shopping Centre, and they've bought a huge premises out there. Why wouldn't they, Morgan? When I mean, your brother's a councillor. I mean, I even said it yesterday. What are they thinking? I mean, with respect, it's utter greed that they would think that the rates that they're charging for premises in Limerick are just extortionate. People are moving out. Debenhams is gone. That took over Rocha stores. I
think Debenhams have gone completely, aren't they? Completely gone out of the.
Look, let's face it. They were going to go anyway, and they just used COVID, and they just pulled out and left the staff, and the staff were trying to picket the place, and they left the staff high and dry. But Eason's have moved out to Doradoyle. Free parking. You can't even park for 2 minutes in the city, and you get a ticket. And then you're paying.
It's certainly, I would say that Limerick, from my childhood of Limerick, started being a very sort of small. I mean, we always had Doradoyle. Limerick has certainly changed in terms of the rate situation. I think it's quite.
It's just.
But I haven't lived there. I haven't actually lived there for quite some time, so it's very difficult for me to comment. I can definitely comment about what goes on here in New Zealand, and I will do shortly in terms of the COVID thing. But just going back, I finished off the master's degree, and then I lived in the UK for a number of years, working for various food companies, Nestle Waters, and then I worked for Morrison's PLC. But while I was, I was a technical manager for grocery 1 and 2. So that's everything in ambient except beers, wines, and spirits and tin foods. It was a very busy job. Lots of traveling around Europe and North Africa and stuff like that, visiting and auditing food factories. But while I was there, I was working for Nestle. I was going down to a conference on the Monday, and as I was traveling down, I got on a train, and a girl got on the train. I was single at the time, and that happened to be my future wife, and she was a Kiwi, So she was in the train. I was looking at her. Yeah, she looked like a goddess. Honestly, she was absolutely incredible looking girl. I was just like stunned, like the lightning bolt situation, So. And I thought, how am I going? I mean, there was all these people between her and me. I thought, how am I going to actually get over there to talk to her? But anyway, as the train went down the track, all
You're
these people
an Irishman. You'll find a way.
I figured it out. I figured it out.
Come on, snap out of it, man.
So as the train, they were emptying out, and then the girl who was sitting alongside me, she left, and then, as it so happened, Rochelle, my wife, actually sat down alongside me. So I started talking to her. Found out she was a Kiwi. I found out later on that she didn't understand most of what I was saying to her. And before she got out, I gave her my business card. And I thought, well, I just felt like she was way out of my league, in terms of, just generally, I just thought there was no chance, But about nearly 4 months later, she sent me an email And
But she
but I
took long
hadn't.
enough, didn't she?
Well, it did, yeah, and I thought that was sort of like not a good sign, But
Are they
apparently,
slow,
immigration.
are they slow in New Zealand in taking
No,
the?
there was a bit of a good story to it. Is that the UK Immigration Service had lost all of her paperwork, and they were trying to actually get her out of the country. And she had to go and re-photocopy up all her degrees and all of her other qualifications and all of her applications, which she happened to have, and put that application back in. But they were desperately trying to get her out of the country, So, but as it happens, she got through all that, and at that 4 month period, she knew she was safe enough. She wasn't going back to Auckland straight away. Then she contacted me, and then just a bit of a funny one. The first date did not go well. It didn't. She didn't seem to like me at all, and she was very standoffish. And I thought, this isn't going well. I just told myself, this isn't going well in my head. Yeah. So we're kind of left on a bit of a frosty sort of a situation at Paddington Station. I thought, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong there? But then she phoned me up. Then about a week later, she said, would you like to meet up again? And after that, then there was no problem. It was great, and we got on fabulous. And then shortly after that, when a couple of years later, we got married in Palace Kenry.
What was the reason for the frosty? You can't just leave that in the ether.
Oh, I leave that floating. No, Mary. So basically, she said,
there now, Morgan.
She said that she couldn't figure out why she didn't figure out why it didn't mesh on the first date, and I couldn't figure it out either. But she really liked me from the train, and so she decided to give me a second go.
There's a book in there. There's a book in there, Morgan.
There's definitely a book in there. How to get it? How to bring it back from the verge of going wrong? Yeah.
You could call it first date, or even
first date. Yeah.
Second.
And it was a lovely first day as well, because we met in London. We went to House of Parliament. We walked along the Strand. We went along the opposite side of the River Thames, all the way up to
where it went down. Paul.
That's St. Paul's, and
it was
very, very nice.
It was doomed from the start when you brought her to the house.
Well, I was doomed to leave the British Isles and come here. I think that's for sure. So, she made it pretty clear that she was going to move back to New Zealand, and I was sort of hoping that wouldn't happen. But we were married for a while before I finally started giving my job at Morrison's and moved to London, because I was actually living in Bradford, and I had done all my courting by driving up and down the motorway to see her every weekend, which was 4 hours down, 4 hours up. So I was committed. Fully
really in love.
Really So, and then we got married, and then I gave up my job, moved down to south of England to live with her. So. And then shortly after that, then Rochelle was working. She was working as an accountant in the city, and she ended up getting very sick. Sort of post-viral flu.
Yeah.
That sort of like she found it very hard. She couldn't get out of bed. She was had no power in her muscles, and started was really quite weak all the time. And I was actually kind of a bit distressed about the whole situation, if I'm quite honest with you, and really quite worried about it, So I knew that if I could get her back to New Zealand, that it would kind of, I thought it was both sickness and confidence, in my opinion. And I knew if I could get her back to New Zealand, it would kind of reboot her, and that she'd get back into the environment.
Where she was a robot.
Huh? You reboot the system.
You. A computer.
We'll
reboot you.
I think sometimes, with like sort of mental health issues and stuff, things of that nature, sometimes you have to sort of turn it off and turn it back on again, and you have to take a bit of a break from yourself.
True scientist, Morgan.
Yeah, maybe I probably overthought it, but in actuality, Mary, it actually worked out really well, because when we came back here, that whole nervousness and sort of
I know.
It just lifted off her, because she was in the environment she was happy in, and she could go and visit her parents. You could see her, where she was born and raised, and she kept on talking about like all this different things she did when she was a kid and stuff like that. So, and it was really good for her, And within about, I would say, 6 months, she was back to normal again. And then there was a problem. Then she wanted to go back at that stage, because I was sort of like, oh well, we'll stay here for a little while, we'll have a couple of children, and then we'll go back to Ireland. But now, like, there's like no hope whatsoever, like no way is that ever going to happen. You're here now, you're stuck here, like, and this is it. So
but you like it now. Do you?
I do like it actually. Yes, I mean it's sort of grown on me. I never really saw New Zealand as being kind of the long-term destination for me. I thought that we'd come here for maybe 4 or 5 years and then return home. But I'm very well established in the job I'm in. It's sort of an enjoyable position. There's some really good camaraderie with the people I work with. We're very lucky that we have a good team, and I think one of the big things that I sort of, and the right decisions that I made was, I got involved in local politics, So I
Yeah.
think that, and not so much that I'm sort of heavily, like I'm, like Emmett, who's sort of like, a paid politician. I did it just to get to know people and to get sort of a
Integrate.
circle of friends and integrate a bit more. But my first day I was arriving in, and it was election time here, election cycle, and I was coming under the bridge around Tamaki, which is the coastal region here, a very wealthy coastal region here in Auckland. And I saw the big sign, Simon O'Connor, and I thought, oh, there's an Irish guy. I'll just go up and introduce myself. So his grandfather actually was from County Cork, He was a Republican on the run during the Civil War, made his way all the way down to...
You seem to meet a lot of Republicans in your travels.
I do. Well, no, he's not actually a Republican. He's actually a very firm royalist himself, He's a big fan of Her Majesty the Queen, So not that I would be in that camp, of course, but there's definitely a book, definitely in Simon O'Connor. I think there's several books. So, and but he's a really great Kiwi, and he's a really great patriot, and met lots of friends, made lots of good friends here now, and built up a good solid base of friends. And I think that's very important when you move abroad, that you have a bit of a base. Like I didn't go to the Irish. I've been to the Irish Centre and Irish Community, but it's actually probably about 10 miles away from where I am, so it's quite a bit of a drive.
But is it always raining there?
Sorry?
Is it always raining there? Because I have this image of New Zealand as being almost as bad as this country for rain.
Well, okay, so just in terms of the topography of the country, of the Auckland region, it's sort of very similar, I would say, to probably very similar to Limerick, really, in terms of, the river and the sort of stuff, and the greenness of the place. It's very hot for 9 months of the time. It's probably tops around 25 degrees Celsius, 25 degrees C, so it's quite warm. And then you have kind of a winter time, which is kind of misting and very heavy tropical rain, and that's probably about 3 to 4 months. And after that, I mean, it's very, very short winter period, and sometimes it can be very mild and you wouldn't even feel it at all. But most of the time, it's warm here. It's about 25, 30 degrees during the summertime. So you get the days are also longer as well here. So you get like the long winters and lots of darkness and stuff like that. You don't get that here, So that's one of the things that I actually miss, that because I actually quite like a fixed winter.
Yeah.
And, but there are visible seasons here as well, So you have your winter and your summer, kind of an autumn, but it's mostly tropical summer. I mean, when I first came here to visit Rochelle's parents, we flew in, and we just after coming from London, and it was raining like constantly for 3 weeks, and you were sort of a bit sort of depressed with all the bad weather and stuff, and you just after coming off a 20, very long flight, and you're sort of hung over, like from the flight. And we arrived then in Auckland. We went out to parents' house and outside, and the sun was shining down. It was like, if you can imagine the best summer's day you ever had, it was like that. But it's like that virtually every day here, apart from the winter time. It's like your best imagined summer's day, and there was birds tweeting up in the trees, and it was just fabulous. It was a
but you can put up with the winter. You can put up with the rain if you knew you were guaranteed you were going to get a summer. That's the thing that's wrong with this country. If our weather was better, we'd have the most beautiful country in the world here in Ireland.
That's true.
But just that you can't organize. When I hear people saying, "Oh, we'll have a barbecue," my backside.
You could have barbecue.
It could be raining from 1 second to the next. You can't guarantee anything.
But before Skeeton they now have a beautiful swimming pool back there, which is all enclosed, and used to do in my teenage years, used to do a lot of swimming and stuff like that, and obviously Ringmeilen used to have a pool as well, which is an outdoor pool. And people say, oh, well, you can't go there now for fine weather. And my attitude was, there's never really a fine day, so just run there. If it's raining, go for a swim. If you want to go for a swim, it might be 10 degrees and you come over with all your fingers sort of like this, but if you want to go for a swim, go for a swim. Go for a swim in the cold,
I used to teach dancing.
You get used to it, sort of. Huh?
I teach Irish dancing in Pallaskenry and in Askeaton. So I know the pool you're talking about, and I know Copswood College, in Pallaskenry. Beautiful. I love Pallaskenry. I think
it is a lovely town,
lovely little village,
and it's got like the best of people. Really lovely people down there as well. We're very lucky that there's great neighbours in Pallas and great camaraderie as well in Pallas, and I think the town has improved dramatically over the years as well. All the work that's being done in Ringmile and Peter, and all the work that's being done on the roads, the footpaths and stuff like that. The town is really looking very, very pretty. But coming back to, if we would just talk a little bit perhaps about COVID.
Yeah.
Here in New Zealand, as you know,
I'm glad you were actually doing the interview here.
I'm sorry, am I leading you a bit too far?
Yeah? No, you're fine. That was one of my questions to you. How is COVID settling with you?
Yeah, I think that I saw this coming sometime beforehand, and obviously through the party, I was sending out emails to people saying, because we saw it all in China, and obviously when the Chinese New Year was on, we saw a lot of stuff in the media, and obviously we have 5% of our population is Chinese here as well, so a large population Chinese. They were expressing a great deal of concern about what was going on in China even before the Chinese were started saying there was an issue, and obviously there's a large Chinese population in Australia as well. So I think there has been preemptive. But I think there's been the government was a little bit slow, and I think they got lucky, and the disease didn't spread or wasn't as heavily infected in the regions as it was, say, in Europe or other countries around the world. So basically, they now say that Europe had the infections probably as far back as January or even December. Now we literally got it pretty soon, pretty late, And some of the infections actually came from Australia on a cruise ship. So there's a gentleman who was on a cruise ship, and he came out of, I think it was Sydney, and he came down to the South Island, stopped off in Christchurch. He thought he was positive, got the test, but went on the cruise anyway. Then he got the result, he was positive, but at that stage he'd already visited several places and infected quite a few people down there. And then there was a place up here where somebody was positive up here at a school, and quite a lot of people there. But the government, I must say, and in fairness to them, the health department, they actually got on top of it pretty quick. And the lockdown, we thought the lockdown would be phased over, a week. They literally, over a couple of weeks, they closed the whole place down. The whole country was closed down within 4 days. And we were all of our businesses, the business that I work in as a technical manager, that was sort of wound up and put into a skeleton.
There's still an awful lot of noise. There's still an awful lot of noise, and I have no idea what it is. It's just.
I just stopped moving, perhaps.
Huh?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Your business was closed down.
Yeah, so basically the business I work for is a company called Backels Corporation. So they're a Swiss company, and they do bakery ingredients. So I'm head of development and research for and quality for Backels Group. But basically it was like managing meeting, what are we going to do next? And as soon as we decided what we're going to do, there was another announcement from the government saying, we're going to close this. And then it was literally every minute we had a meeting, we walked back out again, and just the government had decided to close up the country down, and you have like, I remember just the sort of the sheer, not panic, but sort of like disbelief of it was now real. Now, from my perspective, I had already put a shelf up in my spare room about a month beforehand, and I was stocking it with food and masks, and everybody thought I was nuts. Like, they thought I was completely bananas.
It's a very Morgan type of thing.
Which probably isn't too far away from the truth if you ask my wife. But it turned out to be right in the end. But I think in fairness to the government here, Not that I'm a particularly big fan of Jacinda Ardern. I know that she's sort
That's
of a
what I was
socialist.
going to ask you. That's what I really was actually going to ask you, but about Lucinda Dern. What do you think of her? Do you think, what do you think of her as Prime Minister? Because she seems to be very, she seems to be the buzzword around a lot of places. People think is talking about her being the first woman to breastfeed in Parliament, and now she's the first Prime Minister to do A, B, C, D, E, and the first Prime Minister to. She seems to be ahead of the curve in a lot of things, and very politically, what many would consider politically correct in aspects. What as a personal opinion, what do you think of Lucinda Dern?
Well, obviously, being recorded here, you still have to be careful with your personal opinion of Jacinda Ardern. I think that let's talk about the positive things. I think that she's very good in a crisis situation.
Yeah.
Nobody can doubt that the way she handled the White Island disaster was exceptional. The way that she handled the attack on the mosque was exceptional.
Exceptional.
And nobody can say that she hasn't done a good job with the COVID response. She is a remarkable communicator. She dresses impeccably, and I'm sure she has people who tell her, do all this, organize all this stuff for her. She's a very good speaker. She's a good public speaker. She's very quick on her feet in the Parliament, so she's very quick at coming back with the right stuff saying the right stuff. So she's very intelligent as well. And all around, I think
a whole lot of negatives there now. Thank you.
No, I'm trying to be positive because she actually is an accomplished politician.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the less glamorous side of it. I think that she's been probably forced into a situation where she has to be the poster person for women's liberation and women's rights, and I'm not quite sure that fits with her quite well. When she went into politics, she was quite strong on the communist side. She didn't believe in private ownership, and there's a lot of other things. So she's migrated her view. For the Labour Party to get her into position, they went through about 4 leaders, all men with significant ministerial experience, who were sort of not pushed out of the way, but eventually they literally more or less failed in their positions to be effective opposition. And then Jacinda was put in just very shortly before the election, and I'm sure a lot of people weren't quite sure, but she was very presentable, very intelligent, very articulate, and also looked well. That's important.
She was camera
liked her. The camera liked her. And as regards sort of, she's brought in some legislation here, which, if you're sort of on the right, would be I consider to be hard to swallow. She liberated abortion here, and I know this is sort of a touchy debate. I'm pro-life myself, and I make no apology for that. I think it is a terrible way of life, and I know, and I understand all the arguments, Mary, both for and against, and I still. But she took quite a liberal approach to that. 20 weeks is quite high up in terms of abortion timelines. We're also, we have MMP, which is not like in Ireland to have proportional representation. They used to have first past the post, and she's in a very, very difficult coalition. So she's got Labour, which she's a member of, obviously. The Greens, which are very, very left-wing and very pro-environment. They really killed the drilling industry here. There was a big gas and oil drilling industry here. They more or less wiped out 3,500 jobs on the south coast of Australia, of New Zealand overnight. They went down, closed the whole place down. It's just unbelievable. It's just unreal.
We've just had the Greens coming into a coalition here in Ireland now. The Greens.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
Labour or Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil.
Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and the Greens and some independents on the right,
yeah,
all to keep Sinn Féin out.
all to keep Sinn Féin out. Now, I mean,
Are Sinn Féin that bad?
I certainly wouldn't have voted for Sinn Féin, but the people did, and they deserved, if nothing else, I believe they deserved to be listened to. And when you have a party that's just, well, got the same amount of votes as them, Fianna Fáil, only because one of them, the Ceann Comhairle, automatically was voted in without having to be elected. He was automatically in, so they ended up with the same amount of seats. Fianna Fáil refused to sit down and just talk with Fine Gael, with Sinn Féin. Now that to me is undemocratic, because
I would agree with you, yeah. And I remember seeing, of all people, Jeffrey Donaldson saying, "Well, you guys are expecting us to sit down and do business and break bread with Sinn Féin, but for whatever reason, the South is some reason different." I think, I would never be a big fan of Sinn Féin myself. I was, but since the ceasefire, I think they've committed themselves to parliamentary democracy, and I think they've been.
But I mean,
effective,
I mean, Morgan, it's like this. There's never going to be peace anywhere. There was only peace in the north because you had the likes of Martin McGuinness and Jerry Adams and Mo Mowlam going into prisons that she'd never have gone into. People took chances. They went in. They broke down barriers for the good of peace. And I mean, Fianna Fáil should have. I mean, it'll come against them, I think, in the next election that they didn't.
Yeah, I think
the democratic vote.
I think that the leader, Mary Lou, probably made the mistake of not putting enough of candidates in the field.
Well, she did,
and she's probably living to regret that now. But sometimes it's always a bit of a gamble, when you run a political party.
Well, they had done so badly in the local elections. She didn't.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, and she never expected to get the votes that they got.
The numbers that she got, yeah. But I think Fianna Fáil is virtually is in trouble now, and I really don't like talking about Irish politics, because I'm so far away from it. And I don't think it's fair for me to sort of have an opinion in Irish politics. But I do think the leader of Fianna Fáil probably is looking a bit tired now, That's how I feel about it.
Well, it hasn't had a very successful.
Fresh blood,
It hasn't had a very successful start, to be frank. But I look, the way I feel about it is, if people go out and they take the time to go out and vote, democracy must be respected.
I mean, if you look at it here, for example, on the MMP system, the largest party called National, which would be a centre-right, equivalent of the UK's Conservatives, or maybe Fianna Fáil back and Fine Gael, in Irish politics, won the share of the vote. So essentially they won the election, but they lost the debate. So they lost the debate because they hadn't enough of seats to be able to rule. And that's sort of like, when you have the majority of people voting for one company, we have a party called New Zealand First, run by a guy called Winston Peters. It's quite a colourful character. He's a Maori gentleman.
It's very right-wing, is it?
It is more right-wing. It's sort of more sort of hating of, not hating, but disliking of the Chinese influence in New Zealand. And there's a significant population of Chinese here, which I think are the most amazing,
resilient and creative.
They're just very hard-working people, and they're very respectful, and they pay their taxes, and they're just a really good bunch of people.
Same here in Ireland. They come and they work and they work and they work.
And they just get on to intermarry, and and everybody is very happy. So he kind of stokes a lot of that sort of old, sort of English idea of the crown and of imperialism and what it would have been back in the past, and a sort of a white sort of an all-white country, prior to the Second World War. I think he sort of feeds on that a bit, and he feeds as well. Yeah, he's a Maori gentleman himself. Yeah,
and he's
Winston Peters. Yeah, he's pretty much anti-Chinese, right? But I mean, there is a significant influence from the People's Republic of China here as well, which, from a Secret Service perspective is a bit of a concern. They've bought a lot of land here. They've invested a lot of money in the country. If you go downtown to Auckland, you'll see a number of the hotels and large buildings being built by Chinese companies. And I think there's a sort of a creeping concern, especially now that COVID is sort of essentially being marketed globally in the West as a Chinese problem. There's sort of a souring of that. And,
really
since that,
problem, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Australia and New Zealand now, Australia and New Zealand are now politically in a similar boat, in that relationship with China, with Beijing, is beginning to sour a bit, especially now that Hong Kong have this new security law. The English-speaking allies came out and said that they were not in favor of this particular piece of legislation, and the Chinese government, Beijing, came back and said, you shouldn't be sticking your nose into internal affairs of the Chinese people, So I think that we're in a very, very difficult position here in New Zealand, in that a large part of our GDP is actually supplying dairy produce to China. So it's a big chunk of our economy here, So we have to be very careful with the measurement of that.
Do you think that New Zealand did better than most countries when it comes to, say, closing everything down straight away, closing the borders, and preventing people from coming in or going out to try and contain the virus? Here in Ireland, we had an Irish solution to an Irish problem. We stopped the Italian-Irish match, but left the fans in. Cancelled the match, left all the Italian fans in to celebrate all over, go to all the pubs. Then England had the big Cheltenham races, and thousands of Irish went to Cheltenham and arrived back in the middle of a pandemic. So as pandemic.
Yeah, never miss an opportunity to have a party if you're an Irish person,
No, and then we were all in quarantine, but yet people were going in, and still every day there's about 80 flights coming into Dublin, mostly all passenger flights, and they're telling people as they get off the plane, go and quarantine. But of course, in order to quarantine, they've got to get on buses and into cars and into taxis to get to their homes, and they're meeting people who, my attitude would be, if somebody comes in, there should be a place maybe in the airport, the airport hotel in Dublin, that should be used as a quarantine hotel. People should be put there for 2 weeks and not told get on a bus, go home and quarantine.
Okay, Mary, I'll tell you what happened here now. So basically, that sort of the initial sort of laissez-faire attitude was like that here when it first started. But as things went on and the global response, and people started seeing the numbers were piling up in China, and honestly, China hadn't been quite honest with us in terms of the overall numbers. Jacinda Ardern's government was actually very lucky in that the airlines decided not to fly. It's not that the government here was saying, we are not accepting you in. They are just saying, you are not going to fly here. We are not flying to you anymore. So basically, all those thousands and thousands of Chinese students, which actually are very good for the economy, just couldn't come here, They were the big concern. So basically, we got cut off rather than us cutting them off, if you understand what I mean.
Exactly.
They just decided they weren't going to fly to us, too far away, and it was too costly, and they weren't making a whole pilot. So, for example, there might be financial reasons for doing it as well. So that was one of the lucky things. And as time went on, the opposition was putting more and more pressure on them to make it much more stringent, much more onerous on people coming back. So now, and there's been a gradual sort of making it becoming more difficult all the time. Now, if you're coming back, you have to be almost a Kiwi citizen to come back now. There is a lot of Kiwis coming back. Our tourism section has been completely wiped out. So all those hotels in the city centre are empty, but they've been turned into COVID hotels. There's been a whole load of enjoyment around people trying to escape out of the hotels and building fences. Then the fences had to go higher. Then they had to bring in the military. and there's still people every now and then trying to break out of these hotels, you know, like
not often you hear of someone trying to
crazy,
escape a hotel.
Yeah, there's an Indian gentleman. He arrived in on a flight from India. He smashed a window in the middle of the night, climbed a fence and got free, and they were hunting him down. Then there was a lady. She was really determined. She was 40. She smashed the window, broke out, climbed 2 fences to get out and get free. And then there was another guy yesterday, because this is happening virtually every day. They're trying to get out. He he dressed in blue,
Only in
blue,
there
yeah.
for they're only in there for how many days? 10 days?
2 weeks. 2
2
weeks.
weeks, for God's
2
sake.
weeks.
I
Yeah.
was locked down for 7 weeks. I just didn't go outside the door.
Well, it gets better, but this particular guy just in all blue, and as the military were leaving, he went in with them. You see, kind of tailed in behind them, and then as he was walking out, he was asked by the guy, "Can I have a look at you?" He said, "I'm with the military contingency." And he said, "Can I have a look at your ID?" So as soon as your man said, "Look at your ID," he made a run for it, and then all the police are running after him, all with face guards and PPE, trying to catch him and stuff. So there's been a lot of stuff like that, We had a gentleman here who,
but it brings out the bizarre.
It is. It's a little bit. I mean, if you didn't know that we had a pandemic all around the world, it was getting worse. It's just like normal here. It's just this. Everybody gets up in the morning, goes to work. There's no problem. Nobody's wearing masks or anything. There is a daily meeting with the Prime Minister and Digby Jones and the Minister for Health. When it was first on, everybody was looking at that 2 o'clock. It was must-see viewing, and now everybody's like, "Oh yeah, there's no new cases, cases in the country, but there's new people coming in."
I think that's what's going to happen. People say, "Oh, are we going to be worried for the rest of our lives?" I don't think so. I think once people start going back to, certainly here in Ireland, I think you know the way we are here in Ireland, Morgan. Give the Irish any excuse for a party or normality or that, and they're off. I think once people start going back to work, and as human beings, I think we're very adaptable. We just get on with our lives. And
I must say, one of the great saving graces of the Kiwi is that they're like very friendly English people. If you go to America, if you go to Australia, it's very American.
No, I was born in England, so
I know. We're saying all good. All good things, Mary. All good things.
And then you come to a very friendly nation.
Oh yeah, a very friendly nation in the north. A little bit less friendly in the south. So, as I said, northern people say about the southerners that they're French, because there's so many French came to that from the Civil War in France, But the UK and New Zealand have got a very strong cultural link, so the culture is very much like England,
yeah.
Very,
yeah.
And that reserved kind of way,
The same in Canada. I think the Canadians are probably more English than they'd be Americans.
That's of course.
I see. And I do see the Canadians being very anglicized, and New Zealanders.
And there's a great love for the Queen here as well. They're still very pro-monarchy here as well. There would be sort of not quite so much in Australia. And I started to look at the history of Ireland and Irish Catholics and Irish people in generally. We have had in New Zealand a lot of Scots, a lot of Northern Irish Presbyterians, and then in the South Island there was an awful lot of Irish Catholics went to the south gold mining. So up around here is quite heavily sort of very anglicized in terms of English culture, and then a little bit more less down the South Island, or that's the way I see it anyway.
And how does the indigenous, the Maoris, the indigenous population, how do they fare in New Zealand? I mean, are they treated well? Are they treated with reverence? Are they treated as being the indigenous, being the real New Zealanders? because that's what they are.
Well, there's always this discussion about who the real New Zealanders are and stuff. So the Maori would claim that they are the original sort of finders. But when the Maori actually came here, there was a race of people here before them called the Muriuri. And they were eventually sort of intermarried, and some of them were eaten as well. Sort of, there was cannibalism was actually quite normal back in those days. So the Maori,
some of them were eaten as well.
were hunted and eaten, you know.
It gives new meaning to the phrase we use here in Ireland. I'd eat you.
I'd eat you, yeah. I love you, but
I'll eat you if you don't do that. I'll just eat you.
Okay. There was some, but I mean, look, the Maori I think were treated as badly as any of the colonial invaded countries, and probably as bad as what we got. And they were all dispossessed of their land, and but I think their saving grace is they're a great warrior nation, and you know, a nation that goes down fighting always rises again, like we did. You know, we were battered down, but we rose again. And I think that the Maori culture is in ascendancy here now at the moment. The Treaty of Waitangi was a kind of a forgotten piece of legislation, but in recent years it's certainly taken on a life of its own with the Treaty of Waitangi settlements in the treaty grounds in the north, which is way at the top of the island. So there's been the Crown has been negotiating with all the tribes to go through all their different settlement claims, and there's been large payoffs in terms of getting those clans and those tribes set up really well. But I would say that there was definitely Maori and Pacific, because it's not just Maori here. We also have quite a lot of Pacifica who come here, from Tonga and Niue and Fiji. There's large communities here as well. So.
But
they're definitely overrepresented in the prisons. That's all I can say,
But you do have, I have to say, you do have the most extraordinary rugby team in the world when you do, with the All Blacks. I mean.
Oh yeah, I mean, I switch, I mean, it's great.
I know we love Ireland and we love the Irish rugby team, but the All Blacks is just something special, and we have done.
Oh yeah. We have done it recently, yeah. I walk around my factory with a tricolour, waving it in meetings, and I get booed, and all that. It's all good fun. And I go into the managing director, who is an avid, All Black supporter, and I'll start waving my tricolour around in the office and stuff. So it's all good sport for sure. But just coming back to the Maori thing, I think there's my daughter now, who's at play school, she's learning all the Maori words. So there's a whole push now for biculturalism here. So because it's not just Maori, we also have tons of Chinese here. We've got loads of Indians, we've got Tongans, and they celebrate all of them. So we'll celebrate the Indian ones, we'll celebrate the Chinese ones, New Year. We'll celebrate, even St. Patrick's Day gets celebrated. And I'm like, they're taking her to the playground today.
I mean, even St. Patrick's Day, that should be preeminent.
Well, yeah, of course it should be. We would hope it would be. We need to raise our culture up, And we have a full St. Patrick's Day parade here as well. It goes right through the centre of Auckland, But I was pushing Chloe on the swings, and she's singing a Maori song, and it sounds so much like Gaelic. It's
yes, it does. Yes, and the Chinese, when you listen to the Chinese music and you listen to it with, say, the Chieftains when they played in China, and they played with a Chinese musical group, the symbiotic relationship that's there between the two sounds, it's amazing. It's scarily alike. I mean, you could.
Chinese culture is incredible. Like, it's fascinating.
Just utterly fascinating.
And the unfortunate thing about the People's Republic of China during the Cultural Revolution, they destroyed so much of their heritage, of all of the dynasties prior to them, And when Taiwan was, the Republicans were pushing back from Taiwan, the Taiwanese took a lot of the treasures with them to Taiwan. So that's really is a treasure chest of China, Taiwan. But Mary, there's certainly a deteriorating relationship with the People's Republic of China, between Australia and New Zealand, and the territorial claims in the South China Sea that China is making are causing all kinds of problems for all those Asian nations around there.
Yeah, and
they've been threatening Taiwan, and it's not looking good.
No, but it's not looking at, I mean, there's always got to be a scapegoat in everything, though, Morgan. I mean, I looked at, my research was on the Holocaust, and that, there's always this desire as human beings to find somebody to blame for every given situation. And, at the moment, people, I suppose, do look at China as with a certain sense of skepticism and fear. I hope there'll be reason for that to kind of fade eventually.
I think you're right, Mary, and I think that's sort of like those parties like New Zealand First, and some of and a few more sort of almost far right parties here in New Zealand are obviously pushing on that. I mean, there are more cultures here than just Chinese cultures here, and like I said, the Chinese community is magnificent here in New Zealand, the finest citizens you would ever want anywhere in the world. But certainly,
they never take. They give all the time. They work. They
do. They're hard workers, and we have a lot of Chinese MPs here as well. But even they are complaining about some of the tactics of the People's Republic of China bullying them, or alleged bullying them in universities and so forth. So I think we just it's something that needs to be continually watched, and something that needs to be continually. Our democracy is very fragile. It can go in a flash. And we just need to keep on top of that. But certainly, one could not want or hope to have better citizens than the Chinese people living here in New Zealand.
Well, no, I don't think you could have better citizens anywhere in the world. I mean, you look at Ireland, the first foreigners, if you like, foreigners that we got in this country, or that we were ever conscious of, really, were the Chinese. They came to this country, they opened restaurants, they worked very, very hard. And then, of course, when my dad came here, he was, I suppose, always considered foreign as well, even though he was English, but he was very, very
more foreign.
No, but he was dark. He was very dark and of Jewish background, I found out.
Was he? All right.
But he was really dark, and he stood out in our area, and everyone used to say to me when I was a child, I can still remember, I'd say I was about 10, I used to see him once a year, because he couldn't, flights were very expensive, and he couldn't get a job here in Ireland till I was 14. But he used to come home once a year, and except when the foot and mouth disease happened, they didn't let anyone in. So I didn't see him for 2 years. But he'd come over, and the children in my area couldn't understand him, because he'd say things like, "Fetch me the hammer." And I knew he wanted the hammer. And and you had youngsters, all my friends, and they were looking up at him like, "What is this man speaking? I don't understand him." And then they used to say to me, "Is your dad a Chinaman?" Because they didn't know any other, they had no other sense of foreignness in this country. Chinese restaurant. And we didn't have Indian restaurants, we didn't have Thai restaurants, we didn't have Muslims, we didn't have really black people in Ireland. So there was no sense of Chinese was the as foreign as you could get in
of course,
in Limerick. So my dad had to be Chinese, because
he's
Irish, and that was what my friends used to say to me, and I always remember it. I'm still friends with them since we were 4, but they always remember saying to me, "Is your dad a Chinaman?" Because he looked kind of foreign as well, And or he certainly didn't look like the hard Irish man.
We're not white people, you know. Irish people aren't white people; they're pink people, you know.
We're pink.
Like, we're so white, we're pink, you know. And
but I have to.
You can even see it on my face right now, you know. We're not, you know, we're not white. I mean, I had a number of really good friends who were Africans when I was at university, and one was a Somali, and the other was an Angolan, and I had a few Muslim friends. And they always used to tease me, "You're not white, you're pink. Look at you, you're pink."
You're pink.
Yeah.
lightly browned or lightly reddened.
More. Yes, yeah.
But no,
I mean,
can I ask you what was your view when? Oh my God, he was just a magnificent man, and that was John Oloma. When he died.
Yeah, he was sort of a walking hero here, you know.
But I mean, he was a walking hero to anybody, any fan of any sport, you know. And he came across as being such a lovely, down to earth, normal, nice, charismatic guy. And then when
he was a very nice man, yeah.
So suddenly, and you know, I mean.
Well, I think that John Oloma obviously had an issue with his kidneys, you know, and he had a kidney transplant, and he was actually donated by I think it was a radio presenter that gave him one of his kidneys. But I think that he's the poor man. Unfortunately, when he passed away, there wasn't many provisions left for his wife, you know, and there's been a few sort of rugby games just to help out with the money side of it, you know.
It's so tragic.
So, it's very sad, you know, dying like that at such a young age as well. And he had so much more to give, I think, to rugby in general. But he was a great.
But he did an awful lot of work. But I'm thinking of, and I was so incredibly proud of this small country of ours, of Ireland. Incidentally, do you consider yourself Kiwi or do you consider yourself Irish?
I'll always be an Irish Republican to the day I die, you know.
That's fantastic.
I will eventually I will eventually become I'm a Kiwi by
citizenship.
By citizenship, but you know, I'll live and die.
But an Irishman by soul.
Yeah, I mean, I would love nothing more than to be able to come home, but I just don't really see my family situation really being able to do that, you know.
That's quite sad, actually, because I mean, my mom lived in England for 5 years, and she used to say the English people are the most wonderful, most embracing people in the world. She was an Irish nationalist, absolute belief in there being a one nation. Always believed our national anthem should be a nation once again, and not our Onaveen. Always craved a one Ireland. Loved the English people, but you know, just was heartbroken for home, and she said the clothes didn't dry the same, the rain didn't fall the same in England. And I suppose if she had
you have to be careful, Mary, because it can drive you insane, you know.
It did drive her. It actually did, to the point that my grandmother, my father's mother, said to her, Myra, if you know, maybe you should, you know, send Mary to school in Ireland, you know. And then Dad decided, look, the best thing was for her to come home, set up home, and he'd try and get back here. But it took him 14 years to get a job here in this country.
Yeah.
She just couldn't settle. She just came from a small little area where they didn't even have a key on their door. The neighbours would come in. She'd just go and pull the door out to suddenly.
I mean, it was like that. It was like that in 70s Ireland. You know, I mean, when I was born, it was like that. You could just leave your house unlocked, and everybody was so welcoming. And I'm not saying that's not the case now, but I'm just saying it was a different Ireland. And the thing is that I have thought like that many times when I lived in the UK, and I've thought like that when I was here as well. And it's an unhealthy thought pattern, you know, because
it's very unhealthy for her.
It will drive you crazy. You have to try and at some stage you have to try and embrace the country, and I have tried to do that.
Too Irish to embrace it. To be quite frank, I think my grandparents were. Well, my grandmother was Welsh, my aunt was Welsh, My, you know, they were. She just felt that she was alone. She was the only one Irish that when she'd salute people on the street, they looked at her. She felt everyone was looking at her as if like, who is this mad woman saluting us? We don't know her. But she was the problem. She just didn't want to give it a chance. She just wanted to be home in Ireland in a small little area where everyone knew each other. There was about 30 houses, and they were either related or married into families for generations, maybe 6, 7 generations. You don't.
Oh yeah, and I mean, like, you know, back in the day when I first started courting, you know, I was going out with a girl, and she was a Davern, you know, and we had to sit down and think, okay, I got Daverns in my family, and we had to sit down and think, okay, are we actually related, or are we related by, you know? And who would think that you'd ever think about that in the UK, you know, or any other country in the world? And you know, you had to actually sit down and think, okay, right, well, just figure this out, because I don't want to marry my cousin, you know, kind of stuff, you know. So, and it used to be, you know, sort of like that, you know.
No, when I say that everyone was kind of related, what I mean is my mother, there was 9 on my grandmother's side of my grandmother's sister. There was 9 in their family. And my grandmother had an only child, and she had me, an only child.
Yep.
So there was 9 families, brothers and sisters, all, you know, all within the area. And then there was neighbors who were neighbors for 6 or 7 generations.
Oh yeah, I know exactly.
We're now living in this cul-de-sac. We're now living in this cul-de-sac opposite the road. So everyone in this cul-de-sac has known each other. Our families have known each other for generations. So it's a very close-knit community. And
I mean, you could say that. You could say that in Palestine, like, you know, you could say that in Palestine, like, I know people's grandparents, great-grandparents, and all the way back, you know, back before the Civil War even, you know, neighbors and friends and family.
Yeah.
And I miss, I mean, God, it's actually
feels, you go to London,
but it actually feels like a pain in your chest, you know what I mean? Like, when you think about the grow for home, it's really, it's gut-wrenching, you know? So I try not to think about it too much. Thank God we have the phones, we have the internet. I really do miss my brother in it, like almost like I really badly miss him.
I have to make a contact with Emmett and get him on the show.
I'm on a daily contact with Emmett, and he's great sport, you know. And I obviously miss my parents now, who are quite elderly, you know. I'd love to be back, but you know, my wife has no intention of coming back, and I have a young child, and I have to do the right thing by my family, you know. But if I get back every 2 years, it really does sort of. I think if you do 3 years, your head gets a little bit. You do get a bit sort of. It does addle you a bit. If you can get back every 2 years, you've got something at the 12 months period to look forward to getting back again to see everybody. You know.
Yeah, my friend lived for 30 years.
It can be harder, right? You know.
My friend lived for 30 years. My friend, since we were 4, she lived for over 30 years in Libya. Now she'd come home twice a year with the children. They'd all come back. Sometimes Mohammed would come back with them, and then he'd go back a little bit earlier than them. But that made her feel, and she used to play wall to wall wolf tones and all that, and that used to keep her feeling like she was here in Ireland. Or she used to play Brendan Boyer or Joe Dolan just to have.
Yeah, I think you got to be careful that you don't end up going. You become more Irish when you're abroad than you are when you're at home, you know, that sort of thing.
I did ask somebody that the other day. Do you feel that when you're abroad that you become more Irish than the Irish themselves, because you're embracing it more than we do here in this country? We take it for granted, a lot of stuff for granted.
Yeah, I think that's some of it, right? I feel that you know, some days when I'm driving around here in New Zealand, I actually forget I'm in New Zealand, you know. The topography and the landscape and the colour of the land.
Very like Ireland.
Apart from like you driving around and see some like really bizarre tropical plants, you know, you say, oh yeah, I'm actually in New Zealand. Or you see some of the fauna, the wildlife here is just unbelievable. Like,
Yeah.
we have a bird called tuis, and they make this really unusual melodic scream, and then there's all sorts of unusual animals here as well, like possums. I've never seen a possum before I came here. And you're going out there, you're looking at a tree, and you see these bright red eyes looking back at you. I think, oh my God, Jesus, like, it's so scary when you see them for the first time. And then when they start screeching at each other,
You see those things here in Ireland as well, but you usually have to have a few drinks taken.
Yeah, we see this. Yeah, the possum, yeah, the God.
Before we draw to a close, going back to Joan Olomo, do you know what? I was incredibly proud about the connection between this lovely island that I live on, Ireland, and your island was, and I think it's the most heart-wrenching and the most beautiful imagery that was ever created, and that is the newspaper article following Joan Olomo's death, when the whole page was jet black. It must have cost an absolute fortune for the newspaper to publish it, with just the feather, the All Blacks feather, and one branch of feather just falling to the ground, and the symbolism behind that. It needed no words. It was just the black page, and I'll put it up here actually at this point. The black page with the feather and the fall and one falling leaf from the feather.
Yeah, the silver fern is obviously very important as a symbol for New Zealand, And on that point, actually, they actually wanted to change the flag about 4 years ago. They wanted to change the flag over to with a silver fern design, and it was rejected. Actually, it cost several millions to do the whole flag. So it just shows that there is still a lot of love and graw for the whole English tradition here, and they wanted to keep the Union flag on the New Zealand flag. So just to that point, I might be an Irish Republican and a nationalist, but I'm not living there. So I would never recommend this country going down the route we did and have a republic. I know Jacinda is actually quite.
As a Republican and as a staunch Republican that you are, a staunch Irish Republican, you wouldn't advocate republicanism in New Zealand?
No, I wouldn't, because I think our republicanism was born out of a desperate need and a struggle to get away from a really violent oppression, and cultural sort of oppression. That's not the case here.
No,
there is nobody. It's a very equal social society. It's growing that way even more, and there's a great recognition of Maori culture here through the Treaty White Triangle Settlement. I wouldn't recommend anybody going through the torturous route we've had to put ourselves through, and the country through the Civil War and all that other stuff, and the war. Yeah,
you wonder what it's all for.
Why would you do it?
You wonder you wonder what it's all for, given that we have, that's another shinshkelela, as they say. But since okay, you look at the likes of Robert Emmett and Padraig Pearson, all of them that finally that died for Ireland, and for us to hand it over to Europe, because what they wanted was for an Ireland that could actually stand independent and fight its own corner. Now there's twos and fours, there's fours and against everything.
My grandfather Mary was an old IRA man, fought in the Civil War and fought against the British as well. And he used to say to me when I was a child, and he was in going around in a Zimmer frame with both pins in his legs, he would say, "Don't die for Ireland." He said, "Live for Ireland."
Live for Ireland.
Live for Ireland. He said, "I've seen plenty of people die for Ireland." He said, "I don't want that for you." He said, "Live for Ireland."
And on that point, I think there's no better ending than that. Don't die for Ireland. Don't die for any country. Live for it.
Yep, that's right.
Emmett, says I. Where did I get Emmett? Your brother's Emmett. Morgan.
Thank you, Mary.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mary.
Morgan, O'Brien. from Limerick, but living in Auckland, New Zealand. Thank you so much for coming on. The last time we were on, there was picture and no sound for me, which a lot of people would probably be very grateful for and would have paid for.
Imagine.
You could see me, but you couldn't hear. So at least we tried, and eventually we succeeded.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you so much, Morgan, for coming on today.
And thank you for all your time.
And how do you say goodbye in Maori? Do you know?
I'd have to ask my daughter.
Oh, you don't know?
You don't know? Slán Awalya.
Slán Awalya. Slán.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you.